Fighting in eastern Ukraine leaves devastation and 1 million people homeless after repeated peace attempts. The hope of a durable solution remains faint at best. European, Ukrainian and Russian leaders reach another peace agreement that could yet become another scrap of paper, though pressure grows on all sides to make it stick. Ukraine gets billions in financial lifelines from the West, but how long will that keep the government afloat? Without peace, its president threatens martial law. And with some calling to arm the Ukrainians to repel Russian-backed rebels, how much does the conflict risk turning into an even deadlier proxy war? Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network, hard talk with a matrix of newsmakers. Joining us here in Brussels at the European Parliament for this program is Hans van Baalen, who's on the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee and is a member of the Liberals and Democrats. In Kiev, Dmytro Kuleba, Ukraine's ambassador-at-large for strategic communications. And in Baku, Sergei Markov, who's co-chair of the National Strategic Council of Russia and a former member of the Duma representing President Putin's United Russia Party. Welcome, all of you, to the show. I'd like to start with a question for all of you, starting with Hans. There's a lot of skepticism. The latest ceasefire plan is not going to hold. What gives you the impression it will or won't, Hans?
Well, it will if Vladimir Putin understands that also the future of Russia is at stake. He can silence the rebels. He can do so. The problem is in Debaltseve, where the Ukrainians are more or less in an enclave. And, of course, this enclave should be freezed. The Ukrainians can stay there. They have to turn in their heavy armor, and the same have the rebels to do.
Okay, Dmytro, what's your take on this? Do you think this ceasefire plan is going to hold?
What gives us hope that the ceasefire will be implemented is the personal involvement of world leaders into the settlement process, because the resolution in Minsk was endorsed by 4 leaders, presidents of Russia, Ukraine, France, and Chancellor Merkel. And the second argument is the deteriorating economic situation in Russia that may motivate it to change its policies towards Ukraine.
Okay, Sergei, what is your take on this? Are you as optimistic as the other 2 gentlemen?
Yes, I am optimistic because Novorossiya army stopped its attacking against Ukrainian army, and Ukrainian army stopped its terrorizing, shelling of the peaceful neighborhood of the Donbass and Lugansk. On the Baltic there will be some fighting, but generally I think both sides will spend few months for the preparation of the big armies and for starting the battle again, something on April, on May.
Hans, what if this does not stick, this peace plan? You have said that all options are open.
Yes, absolutely.
If it does not. What do you mean by that? Do you mean sending arms? Do you mean some sort of military involvement?
Options. It means increased economic sanctions, which will cripple the Russian economy. And we don't like that, but it should be done. It means that it could be that either the United States or the European Union or a combination would train Ukrainian forces. Everything is possible because we can't accept what Putin does in eastern Ukraine and the Crimea.
Okay, but Dmytro, couldn't this be very inflammatory? Couldn't this set off a proxy war if we actually start arming you?
Well, the choice is very simple. Either Europe has to stand by and watch how principles and values it is based on are being violated by aggressive Russian behavior, or it can support Ukraine in defending our territorial integrity and fighting terrorism supported by Russia. It's very simple.
Sergei, what would the Russian reaction be if the Ukrainians were armed?
Russia will continue its policy to support Donbass people from genocide organized by Kiev war criminals. And we think the solution for Ukraine is democracy. Democracy means, first of all, federalism. Those who support federalism support peace. Who's against federalism and against democracy in Ukraine, they're against peace in Ukraine.
Dmytro, what about this angle about the territory, as Sergei is talking about? Is it not time, as some have argued, that perhaps this region should be given its independence? What do you think?
Well, independence is not even on the agenda. Neither independence nor federalization, as mentioned by Mr. Markov. What was agreed in Minsk and what should all parties abide by is the process of decentralization as a part of all Ukrainian process of strengthening our governance. That's the whole point about. We will not allow any kind of fantasy regarding federalization or independence of certain regions of Donbass and Lugansk to become reality.
Hans, do you see any kind of negotiability on this in order to try to find a long-term peaceful settlement?
Well, the long-term peaceful settlement would be democracy in Russia, freedom of speech in Russia.
But that's not going to happen right now. Not full.
Elections.
Come on,
Yeah,
be realistic about this.
I mean, Putin is the stumbling block, not Ukraine, not the West. So there is a red line, and it means Putin has to make this ceasefire work. If not, again, all options are open.
Okay, Sergei, let me go to you. Has Russia given up the idea of Ukraine joining the Eurasian Union?
We believe that Ukrainian people should have right to decide about Ukrainian policies themselves. And we know, according to the all opinions polls, majority of them prefer to speak Russian, and all of them want Ukraine to be in both good relations with Russia and with the European Union. And for this, we should limit those groups in Kiev who is responsible for numerous war crimes.
Dmitry, how do you answer that?
Well, I think Mr. Markov put eloquently the Russian position on the developments, and I didn't hear any sign of willingness for peace and stabilization in Ukraine. However, I'm sure that the Ukrainian side, we as Ukrainian authorities, with the support coming from Europe, United States and other democracies, will find a way to make Russia abide by its commitments.
Hans, what about on this angle about Ukraine perhaps not joining the European Union, remaining non-aligned? Wouldn't that sort of take some of the reason for this conflict to be?
Well, Ukraine has to decide with whom to ally. Ukraine has always worked with Russia and with Europe, so it's up to the Ukrainians. And there is not a threat to Russia. It's a made threat. And again, Russia has the key, that is to back off.
Sergei, let me go to you. A very, very different question. What about sanctions? Have sanctions had any kind of influence on your government at all?
This sanction very much increased support of Vladimir Putin because he is regarded as a leader of the country under the attack. And we believe that such attack of the West against Russia should be stopped, and we should cooperate in the moving Ukraine back from the civil war to the peace and democracy and federalism. Remember, federalism is solution for the Ukraine.
Okay, so Dmitry, what about sanctions? Do you think they are working? Do you think they should be tougher or what?
Russia is at the moment of choice. If it prefers to de-escalate, then definitely we can look at the sanctions and reconsider them. But if Russia continues escalating situation, then sanctions should be strengthened, and we are pretty sure that they will have a serious impact on Russia and its policies.
Okay, and last question very, very quickly. Hans, how much influence do you think the Russian government really has on the rebels?
They have armed them, they have created them, they're supporting them logistically and otherwise, so they have 100% control.
Sergei, how much influence does Mr. Putin have on those rebels?
I think Russia has influence on the rebels, same as Washington has over the Kiev. Everybody understands this is war, indirect war between Russia and United States. That's why we should stop it and not to continue to the situation move to the big European war. We want to stop this degradation of the situation in Europe.
Sergei.
Stop civil war in Ukraine and give, again, repeated democracy, federalism, and freedom of speech in Ukraine.
We got to go. Sergei, thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of our guests, Hans van Balen, Dmitry Kuleba, and Sergei Markov. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with The Network.